Hello everyone, and welcome to this video demonstration of Dunder Mifflin Scranton, the fictitious paper company from the hit television series The Office. And we're going to see how ServiceNow is going to help optimize some of the mundane, monotonous, and antiquated processes at this fictitious company. This specific video is going to demonstrate the use case of an employee who gets terminated from the company, and we have to ensure that all of the assets that are associated to this employee get offboarded successfully. We'll walk through a prescriptive workflow for exactly how that gets done, with all the stakeholders at Dunder Mifflin playing a role in that process. What we'll also do is we'll zoom out a little bit and look at a journey slide of some key personas at the company and some of the tasks that they do day to day at a high level. And then we'll go through that offboarding journey for that employee. And then we will also demonstrate what that looks like in the platform. So let's switch to a quick journey slide to walk through all of the personas and the tasks that we're going to do on the platform. All right, so ServiceNow automates the asset lifecycle at the office. We'll start off with Nick, the IT guy. Fun fact, Nick, the IT guy, the guy who played him, actually had two different roles. He played both the IT guy at Dunder Mifflin, but also played the role of one of Pam's close friends at art school. He's also one of 6 different IT guys that Dunder Mifflin have had over the 9 seasons of the show. Nick, the IT guy, his job is to manage processes across the asset lifecycle, right, from an asset management perspective. Obviously, he has several other IT roles, including keeping Dunder Mifflin's firewall active, keeping their website running. We're going to see some assets in the workspace. We're going to look at all of the dashboards, widgets, and cards that are available to Nick out of the box from the ServiceNow Hardware Asset Management product. Then we're going to switch gears and look at Darryl, the warehouse manager, who will eventually, as you may know, ended up becoming assistant manager upstairs in the office. So Darryl's role at the time in the warehouse was to manage stock, receive assets, anything and everything to do with the stockroom and inventory. So to that effect, we will take a look at the stockroom and inventory management capabilities on the platform, see what some of the tools are that enables Darryl to do his job every day. But then we're going to fast forward a little bit and something happens. So if you remember this episode, Roy, who was Pam's ex-fiance at the time, took a swing at Jim and missed. But missed because Dwight, and you can't see him in the picture there, but Dwight pepper sprayed him, and I think he had some other weapons that were ready to go. But long story short, Roy, the warehouse worker, sees an end to his employee journey at Dunder Mifflin. This is where we're going to see Toby, the HR rep, as you know, doesn't get along very well with Michael, doesn't really like to see him too much because Michael always takes jabs at him, and in part Michael doesn't like to see him because he just hates him for reasons that we've never really figured out. But Toby is going to submit an offboarding form on the platform, so he no longer has to go and see Michael in person. Michael will receive that form, he will approve it, and that's where the workflow will pass it on to Nate, who is, as you remember, was called Bueno Worker by Dwight when he was looking to hire someone to replace some of the folks that left the warehouse. I think they'd won the lottery at the time. Anyhow, so Nate, a good worker, is going to receive the asset that's assigned to Roy in the system automatically. He's going to review or evaluate the condition of that asset, and the platform will give Nate a few different options that he can take once he's evaluated the condition of the asset. So it could either be redeployed, it may be requiring some kind of repair work. So we'll see what the actions are that Nate's going to take in this journey. Once the asset is redeployed back to the inventory, let's assume in this case that the asset is redeployable. Roy may have been an aggressive worker in the office, but he certainly took good care of his assets. So this is going to go back into inventory. And that makes everybody happy because the process works seamlessly, consistently, each and every time with the right stakeholders involved to do the right work at the right time every time. And that's why Michael is the world's best boss. All right, now let's switch to the ServiceNow instance where we're going to go through, first of all, Nick and his role, Darryl in his role as a warehouse manager, and then we'll go and submit that offboarding journey request for Roy for all of the assets that are potentially assigned to him for offboarding all the way through to Nate's actions as the evaluator and redeployment of the asset. So here we are logged in as Nick, the IT guy, and we're going to see everything and anything that Nick would be interested in as far as his IT assets are concerned. So we're in the hardware asset workspace, which is enabled by licensing the hardware asset management product on the ServiceNow platform. Right off the bat, Nick gets to see some key important actions that'll help improve the quality and accuracy of his book of record. Things like filling in missing model numbers, filling in missing locations that are associated to his assets. So in this case, he says I've got 66 assets that are missing locations. So I can just click on view records and Nick can dive directly into those asset records that are missing locations and start to update them as needed. Some other things that Nick sees within quick links is how many of his assets have been normalized by our content library on the ServiceNow platform, which has over 4.1 million part numbers on there today and growing. You can see how many active requests there are and what stages they're in. So simply by clicking on that, I can see all of the requests for assets, what stage they're in, who they're requested for, and so on. Similarly, you can see all the assets that need to be transferred from stockroom to stockroom, how many restocking orders, and so on. Scrolling further down, he gets a quick view into all of the assets pre-categorized by model category. This categorization takes place from the content service as part of the normalization activity. He can also see what stage of the life cycle all of his assets are in. Most of them are in use, some of them are in stock, but there are a few missing assets that have been recorded as missing as part of various workflows. All of these are dynamic, so if I wanted to click in on all of the computer assets, for example, that are in use, I would simply click here. If I wanted to see any server assets, simply click on the appropriate button here. So if I click into this view here, I should see all the server assets that are part of the organization. Financial data such as asset value, so Oscar, Martinez, Angela, and Kevin as part of accounting probably would keep some financial records that you'd be able to ingest into the ServiceNow platform. Fairly certain that Dunder Mifflin wasn't using an ERP system, or if they were, and it was available in the cloud, which I doubt, we'd be able to integrate as part of ServiceNow's integration hub capabilities with REST protocols and SOAP protocols as well. Some other things you can see as well, Nick can see how many assets are eligible for refresh based on refresh periods that he would be able to set at the asset model level, and he can immediately see which assets are coming due for refresh. If I click in here on model management, I can see all of the different hardware models that I have within my organization. So if I wanted to see how many different types, for example, of iPads were discovered in my environment and normalized as part of this service, I can see that I have two distinct models of iPad. If I click in on this one here, this 11-inch model, it should give me some information about the blueprint behind all of the assets. And I can see I have 5 iPads of this model number in my database. But at the model level, I can start to see things like useful life. So this is where I'd be able to apply my refresh life cycle. So if it's a 2-year cycle, I keep it at 24, and any new asset that then gets created under this model, so let's say the 6th asset gets created or ordered, it'll apply that math for the 24-month period. I can certify models as well, so I may have some models in my environment that are no longer certified for use. I can run some reporting and start to offboard those assets pretty quickly. Nick can also publish his model to a service catalog. This would allow employees at Dunder Mifflin to request new assets. As part of a separate video, we'll look at onboarding a new employee who may have joined the company and ensuring that that employee gets the appropriate devices that they need to do their jobs. All right, let's go back out to the home page of Hardware Asset Workspace, and let's switch roles now to Darryl, the warehouse manager. So we're going to go into the inventory module here, which is where Darryl would tend to live and breathe within the platform. So right off the top again, some important actions that are specific to a stockroom or warehouse persona. So things like missing stockroom names. As far as we know, Dunder Mifflin Scranton has just the one location. You'd be able to see a missing stockroom manager name as well here. So if Darryl has alternate managers in other stockrooms, he'd be able to ensure that they have manager names identified in those stockrooms. Here's where I'd actually see all of the stockrooms that are available to me. So someone at the Dunder Mifflin parent company might be able to see or have visibility at all the stockrooms that are available across the country. If we go back for a second to the overview page, you can filter any of these dashboards and widgets that, by the way, are available out of the box by stockroom, by location, by the category of asset that you're looking for as well. Loaner asset orders is a place where Darryl probably spend a lot of time. If he has any assets that need to be sent out for temporary use, he'd be able to issue them out through a catalog item that someone would fill out with a start and end date, and then Darryl would have the ability to manage the life cycle of that temporary use asset. Where it is, who it's with, when it's due back, why it hasn't been returned. Any communications and reminders are automatically sent by the platform. They can be configured to meet the Dunder Mifflin communication style if needed. Now, let's go ahead and submit an offboarding request for Roy, the warehouse worker who got let go because of that incident. So we're going to go into our service catalog. So this is where Toby, the HR rep, would go in and he would search for the reclaim assets for offboarding form. Of course, we can publish this form within the employee center experience, which is a little bit more Amazon-esque or pretty looking than the one that you just saw earlier. But just for the interest of time, this is the catalog item that would drive that the service request. So we're going to say this is being submitted or requested by HR. It's going to be requested for Roy. So earlier I had imported all the Dunder Mifflin employees into the CMDB. We're going to say that Roy is going to be separated from the company. He just has the one device. Now I know for all of you Office fans that HP was a proud sponsor of the show. However, I did not have time to create HP assets for all the employees. So you can just imagine this being an HP asset if you'd like. So we'll see that we can choose a reclamation date. Let's just say it's for today. There's multiple methods that the asset can be reclaimed. Now, obviously, Roy works in the warehouse, so it's unlikely that it'll be shipped. More than likely, it'll either be dropped off or picked up. So let's just say that Roy is actually going to drop off the asset on his way out. We're going to hit submit on this request. And now the asset offboarding workflow will trigger. But just to give you an idea, here are some of the stages that this request is going to go through. So Toby or even Michael as the manager of the branch can go in at any time and see where his asset offboarding or his employee offboarding request is at as it's going to go through each of these stages. Right? The idea here is a workflow is going to be triggered. So if I click on this request line item, we see the first task of the workflow populated. It's not currently assigned to anybody, but we can have that configured in the platform to have it assigned. So Darryl may want this assigned to Glenn within the warehouse, if you remember Glenn, or any one of the other warehouse folks that would be responsible for offboarding an asset. So let's assume that we are Glenn. We receive a task, a notification in our email or on our mobile device that we've got a task to complete, which is to schedule the drop off of an asset. So this is where, let's say Glenn would say, contacted Roy to drop off the asset. Right, and we're going to say that it's going to be dropped off. Now, obviously, I may have Scranton in here as a location. Now, I didn't quite create a stockroom for Scranton, so we're just going to have it dropped off to this location. We're going to say that the task is now closed, so I've scheduled the drop off. Now we're going to refresh it. Now we're going to wait till Glenn receives the asset from Roy. We can have SLAs with notifications and reminders wrapped around these tasks as well. Now we can say, yep, Roy dropped it off at the warehouse, right? We can post that work note and we can say that, yep, the asset has now been reclaimed. So the neat thing here is Glenn, as a practitioner, someone who's responsible for fulfilling the service, is simply going to receive the asset and confirm that it's been reclaimed and close the task. He doesn't have to go into the platform and update any asset attributes. So in this case, it says that the asset assigned to field was automatically cleared because of the asset state changing. So by clicking on reclaimed and receiving the asset, the platform now knows that the asset is no longer in Roy's possession. So that field has been cleared. And we'll take a look at that when we look at the asset record in a moment. Now let's refresh this to see if there's any other tasks that get created. Yes, they do. So this is where Nate, the good worker or Bueno worker, is going to receive this task to now evaluate the condition of the asset that they've received. So he's got a few different options here, and depending on the option that's selected, a subflow will commence with the appropriate next steps. So we're just going to say that the device was in good condition, device was fine, and can be reused. Right? So we're just going to post that in here. And we said it's redeployable, and now we're going to close the task. So now let's refresh this form to see if there's any other tasks. No, there aren't. So it says it's now closed completed. The asset has been reclaimed. So now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this asset tag, and we're going to go back into the hardware asset workspace. So now this is where, let's say, Nick, the IT guy, may want to validate if the asset that was offboarded has had its statuses, its states, its locations automatically updated. So we're going to go to the asset estate module here. And first of all, we want to see all of the assets that are assigned to Dunder Mifflin Scranton employees. All right, so I'm going to match on Dunder Mifflin. So we're just going to show matching records. And we're going to see all the Scranton locations. So there seems to be another location here, which I don't care too much about. So I can even filter this record out. I can customize this view as Nick, as I'm logged in as Nick. I can bring in any field, any attribute from my asset table. I can move things up and down if I'd like to as well. So here I can see all of the different assets assigned to different employees at Dunder Mifflin. I'm sure you recognize all of these fun names here and their job titles, especially a couple that I want to call out is, of course, Dwight, assistant to the regional manager, and Ryan Howard, the temp, who is also a founder of Whoop, if you remember what that is, you know, that service that texts and calls and faxes and emails you all at once every time you want to get a hold of someone. We want to look for Roy's asset. So now if you notice Roy's not in here, so that tells me that there's a good chance that his asset was offboarded and that assigned to field was cleared. But let's validate that by actually looking for the asset. So I'm going to clear all of these filters because I actually want to search for that asset tag that we had copied earlier. So I've just cleared all the filters here, and I'm going to run a search on the asset tag that we had copied from offboarding. So there it is. So let's open up that asset, and we'll see some information about it. So first of all, we can see that the asset was originally assigned to Roy. That asset was then cleared into an in-stock use, and it's now available. So we can see that the state of the asset, which was in use at one point, has now switched to in-stock. And the stock room, so we didn't have a Scranton stock room, but we did have it dropped off at the San Diego stockroom. So we'll see that the stockroom details automatically updated as well. So the idea here is that nobody actually has to manage the accuracy of your book of record by updating attributes and making changes and potentially forgetting to make certain changes. The workflow will handle all of this for you behind the scenes, right? Michael doesn't have to get involved other than perhaps to approve this request. Toby doesn't have to approach Michael, which I think makes it better for everybody. And Nick ensures that he's got a clean CMDB all the time. Hope you enjoyed this fun video. Please like, subscribe to the channel. I will be posting some additional lifecycle events at Dunder Mifflin. I figured it's a good office environment that's just ripe for digital transformation. We'll go through a few different journeys over the next several months on the channel. Thank you again. Take care. Bye-bye.